Tier 1, Chapter 22. After this chapter, you're either going to love or hate Nick. That's all.
Chapter 22. A few minutes after we receive our main course, Grace takes the stage. She moves to the side of a large display and addresses the room. Thank you so much to everyone for coming tonight. We are especially pleased to welcome our new initiates. At that, the room erupts with applause. Grace is smiling and nodding at the initiate tables. I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about Tier 1 and what you are accepting and receiving by joining us here. I know some of this information will be familiar to many of you, but now that you have progressed to the point of transitioning, we feel like we can be a bit more candid. A large chart appears on the display. This chart reflects real resource counts at the time that Berg Committee was asked to take control of the government back in 2091. Obviously, the entire world was in flux, so this is the best data they had at the time. The first thing that the committee did after quarantining those affected by the virus was to take inventory of all available resources. People were terrified. They were dying, starving, infected, or scared of becoming infected. There was no time to waste. They simply had to act. A large map appears with 3 highlighted areas. Those who had not been exposed were immediately set up in safety zones, and people from around the world were rapidly migrating to what then constituted the central United States, southern Italy, and Central Asia. These safety zones were instituted through the help of the UN and world military leaders. The world population was decreasing dramatically every day. Anyone wanting to come in or out of these safe zones was tested for exposure. Individuals who had been exposed had to wait weeks to be cleared before entering. Unfortunately, many people from around the world did not have the time or resources necessary to reach these zones. The virus had a death rate of over 60%, and it quickly spread to every corner of the earth. Global travel at the time made it impossible to contain. The committee tried to assist people, but again, in a crisis situation, there was only so much that could be done. I hear some errant chatter throughout the room. Grace waits for silence before continuing. A picture comes into focus, showing queues of people receiving food at a rations table. Available resources were few. People couldn't risk going outside of the safety zones for months. The Berg Committee immediately initiated testing on the virus that had been released. They needed to know more about the replication cycle, possible mutations, and potential treatments. Life expectancy during the crisis was already low due to the unhealthy habits we know all too much about, but the decrease of inoculations in the general population left people particularly weak, and therefore susceptible to this virus. Berg was tasked with not only learning the weaknesses of the virus, but also determining how to strengthen immune systems in the survivors and those fighting the infection. In the meantime, people within the safety zones needed food, water, and places to sleep. Numbers appear on the display. In the 2 weeks after the virus, we went from a world population of 8 billion people to approximately 3 billion. Our world was absolutely devastated and in chaos. I am sure you can imagine the fear and widespread panic. She clicks ahead to the next image. Weeks after that, we were left with an estimated 1.8 billion total population, many of those on their own and unable to seek help. Our central United States safe zone held only 3 million people. The display goes dark, and the room is eerily silent. With limited resources, the committee had to determine a way to allocate them. Who should receive food, water, medical help? These were not determinations that Berg took lightly. With initial data collected in the safe zones, they projected that 90% of individuals residing there were aged 9 to 28. As we would expect, the virus had affected those beyond their physical prime most severely. Using the available genetic data and research, Berg put together a proposal for resource allocation. Individuals who were clean, the top disease markers absent, and who were within the age range of 9 to 18 years old would be given first priority to ensure survival of the species. Some of you may recognize this as the original Tier 1. Tier 2 comprised of those ages 9 to 24 who had no more than 10 disease markers, or those aged 19 or older who were clean, would receive up to 75% of the resources they needed. This, of course, would be limited by availability after Tier 1 received their share. Tier 3 was anyone outside of those limits. They would receive the remainder of available resources. I scan our table to see how the initiates are receiving this information. Tier 2 is taught this history, but I doubt they have heard it in such depth. Cassidy is completely engrossed, her body leaning toward the podium, lips slightly parted. Grace continues. As you know, this system was successful in that it allowed for repopulation and growth. Years later, after the safety zones were dissolved, the decision had to be made whether to keep this tier system or go back to the way things were previously. The committee debated and reviewed their research extensively, ultimately deciding that continuing on was the best way to avoid the pitfalls that had created the crisis in the first place. By centralizing resources, Berg could ensure low waste, sustainability, environmental healing, and specific practices to begin healing our own bodies and minds. They could also ensure that those who had the greatest chance of living healthy lives, contributing to society in meaningful ways, and creating viable offspring would receive society's greatest assistance. Pictures begin slowly sliding across the display. Families, farms, new technology, nature. We are still a healing society. We don't have all the answers, yet. But our numbers have increased dramatically in the years since these events. Our careful and precise organization of resources and Terra healing projects have resulted in increased resources and opportunities for all. We are still fighting to live longer, healthier, more meaningful lives. Tier 1 is where you will have the opportunity to continue to progress, not only individually but together as a community. By committing to live within these proven patterns of success, you will be given resources and opportunities to truly become your best self. Your core needs will be met so that you can focus on serving others and serving your highest potential. This, in turn, serves society not only in the obvious, tangible ways, but through what you create, what you think, and who you become. We are thrilled to have you here tonight, and we are committed to your continued success. Our programs will allow us to support and mentor you as you learn and develop. Thank you for taking this important first step in a beautiful new path. Grace smiles and steps back from the podium as the room applauds enthusiastically. When the noise dies down, she says, I would like to invite Kate Bailey and Nick Standiford to come forward and introduce each of our new initiates this evening. This is it. I stand, and Nick touches my elbow to steady me as I navigate around the chairs. I remind myself that this is a service I am providing and nothing more. There is no reason to feel nervous in front of my friends and peers. The reframing works. Kind of. We had agreed that Nick would go first. He is charming as always and begins with a couple of jokes that pull a good response from the crowd. The first initiate is an 18-year-old with very impressive scans. The pictures I arranged are slowly scrolling on the display as Nick talks. I look toward the back of the room and see Eric giving me a thumbs up. Nick continues to work through the other initiates on his list, but then I hear his last sentence, and I know it's my turn. My heart begins to race. That went a lot faster than expected. I take my place next to him and begin with Max, a 32-year-old man whom I have gotten to know fairly well over the last few years. I show examples of his expertise in engineering. Max is grinning at a table below, and I see many others in the audience sharing glances, obviously impressed with his work. He will integrate in no time. Eventually, I make it to Cassidy. I see her shift in her seat uncomfortably as her name is mentioned. I begin talking about her ability to nurture and serve, how strongly she is inclined towards caring for others and being a mother someday. I smile inwardly. Before the crisis, these characteristics wouldn't have been so highly regarded. I think of my mother. She taught me through word and example that these humble qualities are what society needs. More people who were selfless, who understand that their neighbors are extensions of themselves, individuals who are willing to put in the work to watch someone or something grow. As I finish, people begin to applaud and some rise from their seats, looking toward the initiates. I will have to ask Sherry and Eric how it came across, but based on that reaction, I think we did our part to begin their transitions on good footing. Grace retakes the stage and asks us to exit through the side door. For a moment, I don't move. While speaking, perhaps triggered by Grace's earlier historical account, I was overwhelmed with a thought that hadn't crossed my mind before. I haven't ever felt criticized or less than for following this path. I have never lacked for anything. My life involves sacrifice, yes, but not like Cassidy, not like Max. My commitment to serve with all that I am is again deepened and rolls through me with intensity. Nick nudges me and we walk together behind the curtains. Then, in the dark, we somehow have to find our way back to the ballroom. We probably should have practiced this part. It's pitch black and we giggle like children, feeling our way around, looking for the entrance. Suddenly, Nick's arms are around me, and before I can react, he spins me toward him. His face is inches from mine, and his energy is electric. Kate, you did great. I just wanted to tell you before we go back out there. I know Eric is here, and you will go with him, and, well, I won't get a chance to talk to you privately. I have loved these last few weeks. I love talking with you and hearing what you think. I love watching you with the boys. I love your food, he laughs. I know you're paired, but hearing the heartache that you are going through has brought up, I guess, I have just been thinking a lot. You shouldn't be alone. I want you to know that I will always be there for you. My skin is tingling, and the air feels slow and thick. I have to remind myself to breathe. He lets his arms fall to the side, and I am at a complete loss for words. I have enjoyed the last few weeks too, and I feel close to Nick, but my desperation for human contact and affection makes it impossible for me to think rationally. If Eric hadn't kissed me earlier, I would be in real trouble right now. I have probably given Nick some strange signals with Eric being out of town. Has he wondered if we are splitting as a pair? Is he interested in me like that? Does he think I am interested in him like that? I can't be. I'm paired, and I love Eric. I love him deep in my bones. Sure, Nick is attractive to me and fun, but that doesn't come close to the intimacy that grows from years of growth and perseverance together, serving side by side, knowing every piece of a person. I step back. Nick, thank you. I appreciate you and all that you have done for our family. I am so sorry if I said or did anything that gave you the impression that Eric and I aren't planning to stay together. Our boys are so young. Nick cuts me off. No, you haven't given me that impression at all. I know how difficult things could still be for you in the future with all of this pressure on Eric. I need you to know that you have me. I'm all in. His lips brush my cheek, and he walks out the side door that is now, obviously, right behind me. All in? What does that even mean? All in for Bentley? All in as a supportive friend? I stand there, steeping in my confusion for a minute, attempting to compose myself. Standing alone in the dark, I realize that I am not going to be able to figure this out in the next 5 minutes. Meanwhile, Eric is out there waiting for me. I hear the initiates on stage taking the Tier 1 oath. Except that where much is given, much is required. I burst through the side door and walk briskly down the hallway to enter the ballroom near the back. I sigh when I see him. Eric.